Hello everybody, thanks for coming back for another video. In this one here, I'm going to show you how I modified a cheap, inexpensive Sterno folding stove. And I think this is the ultimate, the number one modification you can do to convert this thing to a wood stove. You could still use this thing for Sterno, little 6-7 ounce cans of Sterno that burn for about 2 hours. They don't put out that much heat, kind of hard to cook with, boil with. You're definitely not going to use a percolator with a can of Sterno and be able to percolate coffee. So I've seen some other videos out there on YouTube, people that have converted these things to wood stoves, and I saw a few problems, with their conversions. Not really problems, so to speak, just um, I think I addressed all the issues there are with converting this stove and still make it compact. Now, it doesn't really fit in the box. It's not a square anymore. It's more rectangular shaped, but it still does fold up. But I'll address each one of those issues that I find is a problem with one of these. Number one is setup. People talk about having to fiddle around with it a bunch, getting it put together, and because of the design of it. So what I did was I kind of helped that out a little bit for the setup part. Okay, so basically you just open this up. These are your sides. Pivot them out a little bit of an angle like that, and then this part folds up. So let me turn it so you can see. And then you just lift this up, pivot these in, and there's little notches right there where that goes in. And then you got to kind of do them at the same time. But there you go. It's put together. And then there's the door. And it's all nice and together. Now, the other problem that I fixed that I felt like it was a problem with this was the original stove had this back portion here bends in, and you might be able to still see where I flattened out these little portions right here that were punched and indented for little tabs to hold the back in. I just folded it open, took a hammer, and I flattened those back out and got rid of them. There used to be another one for the door. Yeah, it was right here. I moved it a little bit over and made another. I just took a cold chisel and slotted it, and then took a punch and indented it so the door has a positive stop now in its new location. This is a very simple, easy mod, but starting with the back, uh, yeah, I can just start with the back. Well, no, actually, what I'm going to do is I'll start with the bottom. Now, the top and the sides you don't have to touch. Just leave those the same. I'll get to the grate here at the end. But you don't have to do anything with those. All you have to do is take the bottom grate off, which here's the bottom grate that the stove came with, okay? And that's where your Sterno can sat. And the back of the can actually used to fit in this little cutout because it was angled in. But then it won't hold as much wood, when it's angled in like that. So that I felt like that was a problem. It wasn't holding as much wood as it potentially could because of that angle in design that it had just to hold a can of Sterno. So I eliminated that by flattening this out. And I took the bottom off and I just made another piece full size for the bottom. So that's the first thing I made. And I used 1/8" 308L stainless TIG rod to bend that out of. And there's the dimensions. It's 6 3/16 inches square. And this part really doesn't matter at all if it's too short there, if there's a gap, or if it touches or anything. It makes no difference whatsoever. But there's the dimensions for that, and that's where I started. I used that TIG rod Now you could use coat hanger and get away with it. Probably you could use, any type of wire you might have laying around that'll work. Um, just that's what I had, and it was about the same diameter, a hair different from the stuff that it came with. So that's what I used on that. Okay, so that's what I started off with. Is I made that wire frame that goes around the bottom here. Okay, and then the back, I took a screwdriver and I bent open the hinges uh, that attached right here on this grate right here. Okay, and it's just thin aluminum. It bends real easy. I did heat it up a little bit first with propane, and I found you didn't really need to do that. The aluminum is malleable enough to just bend it without breaking it with a screwdriver. Okay, so then I took the front door off and the back off of this bottom part right here. Okay, and then I went to modify the back. So here's what I did to the back. It had a bend right here, like I said, where it angled in. So I flattened that bend out. This is the hinges on the top that I didn't do anything to. I did tweak it, bend it a little bit to make it fold up, but I didn't touch that. I just flattened this out. And then the bottom hinges, because of that bend, it was a little bit longer. So I had to trim a little bit off. And I came up 3/8 of an inch and extended, flattened out these hinges and rebent them around. You could use it. You could use that for a mandrel to reform the aluminum back around the rod. And I went up 3/8 of an inch and then cut this little bit of excess off and bent it around the rod. Now this is bowed a little bit. I corrected that in my measurements. So if you make one of these, you decide to make one of these, yours will look better than mine because I had to really stretch it because I didn't quite make that frame a little bit, or I didn't quite make it the base plate uh, big enough, for it to work in that. So anyway, there's that, and then we already covered the base, and then the bottom, and that was probably maybe the trickiest part. I don't know. It was probably the most labor intensive, and it still wasn't that hard. Now I used 26 gauge stainless steel that I had laying around, but you could easily do this like other people have done in their stove mods. They've used cookie sheets. You pick one up at the thrift store or whatever, or the dollar store, and you can cut a piece out and drill holes in it, and they've made those and just throw them in there. But then, like I said, it's got that angle in there, and you're not going to be able to really fill it up with wood, and so it burns longer and stuff. So basically, here's all the dimensions for the bottom piece that I made, and cut it out. These little tabs right here are crucial. That's what holds the whole thing together, basically. So if we can see, if you can see right here, in between these two side tabs, I made this bottom plate. I made this bottom plate where it has little tabs that stick out, and they lock into those notches right there. So that helps hold it from sliding, back and forth and everything else. And like I said, this thing, once it's put together like that, it's not coming apart. Okay. So then the door, I shortened the door a little bit, and the only reason I had to shorten the door a little bit because I was taking this thing, putting it together and taking it apart, putting it together, taking it apart, and I ended up just stressing that metal out on one of the hinges too much, and it snapped off. So I just trimmed it up and rebent it, and I did this is kind of a prototype. Um, I could have taken my time, made it look prettier. I still may try it out and add some more air holes here on the sides and the back if needed, but I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm sure it's going to work. Like this, it might work a little more efficiently if it had some holes. I think just doing away with those what do you want to call them, little tab retaining things that they had, just flattening those out, just it simplifies the looks of it and everything. Is you don't need them anymore, so why have them? So I just flattened them out. I wanted to make this where it's all one piece. This was the other problem, was the grate. Originally, the grate was like this, and it was missing the center bar. And I saw one guy, he filed in a little notch here and took a rod and would lay it in there. Well, there you have a loose piece, okay? And it's a little bit lower than the rest. It's not even with the rest of the grate. So I solved that simply by making this. And here it is. It's a 24-inch piece of the 308 TIG rod like I used for the bottom frame. And I just bent it into this shape. I took a Dremel cutoff tool and I cut these off where they used to attach, right here, like that. This used to be there, and this one here used to be, like that in there, And so I just took a Dremel and I whacked them off, and then I bent that to the right shape where it would fit, and then made it to where it fits together like that, and made it to where these overhang just a little bit, for support. And then that eliminates that whole not having a center rod, thing like it had that it came with. So yeah, I mean I'm real happy with the way it came out, and all said and done, it took a little bit of tweaking to get it where it would been fairly flat again and everything, but no, it does work. I haven't tried it out, but I know it'll work. And yeah, I think I corrected all the issues that I was seeing with people converting these to a wood stove. Number one being the lack of a grate and having to have a separate grate, or having a loose fire grate that you just lay in there. This is a nice, it's permanently attached to it, If you did use like something like I didn't really explain any of that part, but these 4-inch tabs here in the front and back of the bottom plate are the ones you wrap around, to make basically to make like the hinge or the attachment point for the bottom are these. And I just made, this one that's bowed is a little bit short, but I corrected for that in these measurements. If it was a little bit longer, I'd have more to work with to bend that over. If you were to use like a cookie sheet or thin sheet metal, it'd be a whole lot easier to work with than the stainless was to form it. Not that it was that hard, but it would have been a little bit easier if it was something a little bit thinner. But I think this will last longer, it being stainless, than it would if it was a cookie sheet or something like that. But yeah, I hope you're happy with the design. I took the time to write down all the measurements in case you wanted to replicate it, make one. That should save you a little bit of time in knocking one of these out, so you could go back and pause on the measurements and get all that, so that you could construct one of these yourself if you wanted to. And yeah, I really enjoyed this project. It was a lot of fun, and yeah, I think I'm going to get some use out of this little folding, inexpensive Sterno stove that will now run on wood, Sterno, Trangia, alcohol stove, whatever you want to use it for, or whatever fuel source you'd like to use in it. Yeah, it'll now work. So yeah, I appreciate y'all watching the video. Come on back, because there's plenty more of these videos to come. All right, this is Dave. See ya.